Well, welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us here on our 116th episode of the podcast. We get a chance to talk to head coach of Liberty University, Coach Scott Jackson. Scott Jackson has led Liberty to the last 3 consecutive NCAA appearances for the first time in school history. 21, he was the Conference Coach of the Year. He's got 3 regional wins. As his time as a head coach there at Liberty, every year at Liberty, in his time he's had a 3.0 GPA or better. He's have 11 players sign to major league contracts during his time. And during his time as a head coach at Liberty, they have reached their highest highest national ranking at 14. And that is another program record. He continues to break records for the program in strikeouts, fielding percentage, as well as consecutive wins. Another great thing we got through this, and you'll hear this in the conversation, is that there are 5 Liberty alums on staff. 4 out of those 5 actually played for him during his time since 2016 on the staff. Just speaks to the kind of experience and what he's doing there at Liberty, that people want to continue that experience. Before Liberty, he was also an assistant coach at UNC Chapel Hill. During his time at UNC, went to 3 World Series, 3 straight regionals, as well as have an ACC championship. Continues to be a winner at every place he goes. And this conversation, a full example of why. I love how he lays out his priorities, and he talks about this ultimate baseball experience that they have at Liberty and the unique parts that they're doing, and how he does not want a relationship with his players to be tied to their player performance. He wants that relationship to be built on something much bigger. What an incredible, incredible thing to say. Really enjoyed the conversation and just how he is a player relationship-driven coach. How it starts and ends with a relationship with the kids. Having just started his time in Liberty with that relationship with the players. Having fun with them on the kid, building the trust, being authentic and genuine. That was number 1. You'll hear that more part of the conversation, as well as so many other things. I just cannot thank him enough for taking the time. It was truly a ton of fun. Speaking of thank you, I got to thank our guys at Netting Pros for helping make this happen, helping us out, spread the word. Netting professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Netting professionals specialize in the design, fabrication, installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital graphic wall padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting professionals continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school, and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact them today, 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for all the latest products and projects. So a big shout out to Will Miner and those guys at Netting Pros. Continue to check those guys out and all the great things that they're doing. So again, Coach Scott Jackson for Liberty University, unbelievable conversation, and I just loved it. Great way for us to hit up the new year. He's going to be the first guy here, 116th episode in the 2023 year. So here he is. Enjoy it. Head coach at Liberty University, Coach Scott Jackson.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's been unbelievably rewarding. I thought I was getting myself into a really good situation here. I thought we had the resources and the facilities to win. I thought you could recruit here, and it's just been more than I thought it could be. I mean, I never would dream we'd go to 3 straight regionals. I mean, obviously that was the goal, but you got to talking about it's one thing, and going out and doing it's another. I think our AD that's in place now has been one of the best things that's happened to Liberty, and certainly the best thing that's happened to our athletic program. Ian McCaw is just a tremendous guy and an unbelievable leader. And just, I think the culture within our athletic department, everybody's winning for the most part. And so, with that, I think comes some camaraderie and expectation. And it's a neat place, man. I've really enjoyed my time here, and just the growth of the entire athletic department's been really cool to watch.
And like, because you've been in Liberty, you were Liberty before,
Yes, and I
right?
was
And then you
there.
went
Yeah, I was
away, and
there.
then
Yeah, I was there in 08, 07, 08. And that was right when things, I guess, were starting to get on the right trajectory from a financial standpoint at the school. Nothing had really been built yet. We were still playing in our old stadium. The dorms were kind of the older dorms on campus. A lot of the original buildings, from Liberty were pretty much what we were operating out of. And then when I came back to interview, everything had changed.
nice.
Just literally everything. There wasn't much left that was the same, from when I was there as an assistant coach. And so I thought I knew what was going on up here, and I had no idea until I, kind of, went in there and looked for myself, and it really turned out to be something that I'm glad it happened, because it's been a fun 6 years here. It's been a fast 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, I just and it's funny. I was just thinking, like, when you talk about, like, even because I haven't really heard that the culture within, like, the athletic department.
Yeah.
Like, was that there the first time, or is that something that's also kind of changed?
It's changed. It's changed. I think with what had happened from 2008 when I left to go to North Carolina till 2016 when I came back, everything had it was almost like a facelift. Number one, the resources had started to become a lot more available for, not just the facilities there, but for recruiting and for team travel. And so you started to, I mean, I was at UNC, man. I wasn't looking to leave. I loved it there. I wanted to be a head coach. But there's only so many places in the country I would have left North Carolina for. And I always thought I'd leave somewhere if I thought you had the right support, you thought you could win, and you thought you could go to the postseason, meaning the NCAA tournament, on a regular basis. And when I came up here and saw what we had, I mean, it was like, why not? Why couldn't we? I mean, we've got a, $25 million stadium, an incredible recruiting budget. And, from a travel perspective, everything is there, player development wise, everything is there that we need to be able to win and have it, be able to be sustained, which that's the hardest part, right? It's
Yeah.
easy. It's easy to get there. It's really, really hard. I shouldn't say it's easy to get there. It's easier to get there than it is to continue to keep your program at that level.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, that's what for me it stood out. Like, the more homework and the more I had done, and because, like, I think people like I've known you from afar, especially just being in our area, Western
Yeah.
Maryland and Mid Atlantic. You know about Liberty, but but I think it's, like I said, now it's getting the consistency, and where it is, where, like, what I guess I should say, like, because I do, like, the more and more I think we all get older, is like consistency is just what's really sexy, like,
No
that's because it's
question.
honestly the hardest. But it's like, so how have you remained consistent? How have you kept being consistent?
Well, I mean, I think you have to have talent. I think a lot of people sometimes look at us as coaches and say, man, he's doing something really good there. But it doesn't happen without really good players. And so, I have to give credit to the previous staff before we got here in 2016. There were 3 or 4 really nice players in that recruiting class that helped us get, to a conference championship in 19 and to a regional.
Mm.
And that is what I would say has allowed us to stay consistent, is that the recruiting has stayed consistent. My coaching staff has stayed coherent for a while. It's not like
Mm.
a revolving door with assistant coaches, because they're, again, Liberty's willing to, to pay those guys and to make sure they're well taken care of here, so that they're not looking to leave somewhere else, or trying to make sure that they've got what they need to raise their families important. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. And, to be consistent, I think, it starts just on a regular basis too. Like, are you the same person every day for your players? Can your players trust you? Can you trust your players? The things that go into, what is being a sustainably winning program. I mean, there's got to be some backbone to it. It obviously starts with me, but I think there's a lot of people in our building that, man, they really get it and they really care.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just like being able to show up every day, being that kind of person. It's just funny. Like, it's not that it's funny, but it's like so many things are involved. Like you said, you didn't think you'd leave there, but like having the support and even like that, I think that's just a great perspective of like the administration, the support has allowed you to be consistent. I think that was kind of what you were kind of diving home there, like
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
able to bump
Exactly.
our staff up. We're able, like, administration seems like they're really supporting you.
No, it's incredible. I mean, I've never gone in there and say, "Hey, what do you guys think? We need a director of player development," or "Hey, what do you guys think? We need to, renovate the cages. Hey, what do you guys think? I'd like to charter a flight," and them just push back and immediately say, "Hey, no, we can't do that here." Ian and Mickey, my assistant, AD there, that's our sport administrator. It's like, okay, tell us why. What do you see the benefits here? And let's see if there's a way for us to be able to do it. And when you have people like that get it, that want to be able to provide, and I simply call it just the ultimate student athlete experience. And that's what I think they get at Liberty. I mean, Liberty's unique in our footprint with a mission of our school and what we can do and what we have there. And I think it's a really unique experience, and it's an ultimate experience if you go into it with the right frame of mind and looking at what the school can do for you instead of what you can do for it.
Mm. Can you, so I love that, the ultimate student athlete experience. Is that something that you've kind of like coined within that? And how have you helped, I guess, kind of define that when you're helping, I guess, recruiting, or like, what you want from your players?
No, it's more from a recruiting standpoint. I think, that I've really tried to share that with families. Like
Okay.
the ultimate thing would be for you to leave Liberty and say, wow, I couldn't have imagined going anywhere else. This has become a huge part of who I am. It's a huge part of my story. It's a huge part of my growth. And we try to just emphasize the spiritual area, number one, the social part, the academic part, the strength part, and the baseball part. And the baseball piece, I like to talk about that last, because I think if the other four aren't somewhat of a bigger priority for you at times, and everything's a little bit different during the time of the year, if that's not the case, then baseball is not going to be at its best. And we have a tendency to flip that around a lot as
Hmm.
players. And we want baseball first, and then, the weight room, and then it's my academics, and then it's my relationships with my teammates, and then it's the spiritual part of it. And so that's my job, is to just try to keep the priorities in line. And more importantly, I think the habits and the routines that players need to be able to be successful. What I've found over my coaching career, this is going on 25 years now, like what you do every day versus what you do every once in a while is going to define who you are as a player. And so what are your habits like? What are your routines like? That's probably going to be, and they can change, good and bad. But I
Yeah.
think the big part is to try to encourage those kids to just have good habits and routines that allow them to be the best version of themselves every day.
And I, I 100% agree. Like, even this, I'm thinking of, like, it's what good people do. Like, habits and routines are
Right.
what we're all about. Like I was just thinking, like, coming into this, getting ready to talk to you, like, just thinking about your habits. I'm like, this guy must have some, just what you continue to do throughout your career, and like where Liberty's at. Like, you must be able to. I don't know what for what, but I was thinking, like, of your habits and routines and how you are, and I'm like, that must be able to get passed down, because as you guys consistently do these things. And can you, as an 18-year-old coming to you, right?
Yep.
And even the guys that you may trade, whatever. How are you teaching that? Like, how are you getting to that, getting to where they're transferring and applying those good habits and routines?
Well, I think, first you got to frame it for them. What does your day look like? Is it a consistent wake up on a daily basis? Are we getting up for a 9 o'clock class Monday through Friday? Or are we sleeping till 11 o'clock on Tuesday, Thursday, and then we're up at, 8 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? I personally don't like that, because I think your body doesn't get, used to what to expect. So we just simply talk about, food, and getting up and eating, number one, and then getting in class, and then getting out of class, and grabbing some lunch and getting down to the stadium. And how can that look, for you to fit, number one, I think, where you're at academically, and what your habits have been in the past and what works for you, but also, let's start our day and get going. I'm different. I'm a morning guy. I like to get up. I'm probably way earlier than most people, but especially during the season. But I just think your brain functions better during the day. I think you're at your best a little bit more, at least for me at practice when you get up and get going. Just telling your body time to get out of bed and make the bed and get going to class. Like those little things, they don't seem like much, but I think when you stack enough of those days together, it ends up being okay. My body knows what to expect. I've gotten up and gotten 2 meals in my body. I've eaten breakfast. I've eaten lunch. I mean, people don't think about that. Like that's important. If you're going to be an athlete and come down and lift for us for a good hour and then get on the field and be really good, especially as a position player, if you're going to be really good at practice, you need calories. You got to feed the machine. So we just talk about it with our guys. I can't, I can't lead them to water. I can lead them to the water, but I can't, make them drink. And so they've got to make those decisions on their own. And I try to be really forgiving with, some guys that haven't figured it out yet. Their freshman year. I was that guy. So I had a 1.8 GPA my first freshman fall, and I was a mess. So I get it, and it took me a while. It took me a while to say, okay, this has got to change, and my habits have to change. So I like doing that. I think seeing that growth in those guys sometimes is just as rewarding as watching them, throw harder and get bigger and faster and stronger on the baseball field.
Yeah, those things are going to be. They're going to use those things a lot longer than
exactly.
the skills. So yeah, and it's when because it sounds like you talked to and you said like, how does it look for you? And that spoke to me about like, I guess I would assume, you're having these conversations with each guy. You kind of check in with each of these guys to see what works for them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I try to do. I think. I'll kind of zoom in on something. Maybe, for example, our freshman third baseman last year, Cameron Foster, big 6'4" kid, engineering major, just an unbelievable kid, very smart, fun to be around. And I overheard something in the cages one morning, and I don't eat breakfast, and so it just started for me giving him a hard time and checking with him just about every day. After that I saw him, hey man, what'd you have for breakfast this morning? And sometimes he'd tell me a Pop-Tart, and other times he'd tell me, good. But again, a kid that probably isn't a big breakfast eater. Okay, that's fine. I get it. But your body needs that, at least during this time when you're trying to put on weight or you're trying to get stronger and you're trying to be a freshman position player that's going to last for 56 games. So, that's what I try to do. You try to connect with the kids in a way that has something, maybe doesn't have anything to do with baseball. I really like to try to do that with kids because I don't want our relationship to be built on just, the game. It's what I think we have in common, and it's what's brought you here. But let's take our relationship a little bit deeper, because the last thing I want is a kid to think that his relationship with me is tied to his performance, because then that's really that's not what you want as a coach. Our relationship's good when you're playing well. That's a very empty, shallow deal there.
I love it. I don't want our relationship to be centered around your performance. Is that it was?
I don't want our relationship to be all about baseball, because you'll think about your relationship with me being tied to your performance. So if your relationship is tied to with me is tied to your performance, then it's not worth a whole lot.
Big time. Oh yeah, love that. And then to talk about like them not not reaching their full potential too, because they are scared of that, or like if they were tied to that relationship to just their performance, then they're truly probably not even going to get the most out of their performance, because they're worried about maybe that relationship with you. Where if we see beyond that, may allow them to relax a little more, hopefully reach their full potential.
No, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's exactly what I try. If you are yourself and you just come down to the ballpark, leave the cell phone, just leave it in the car or leave it in your locker, leave the homework, leave the girlfriend, leave the family, because there's nothing you can do for the next 3.5 hours that we're together on the field. There's nothing you can do about that stuff. So just come be who you are. We're going to meet you right where you're at. If you're having a bad day, you're having a bad day. Like, if you can just be yourself when you get here, then that way I know what I'm dealing with, and I'll do the same for you. I'll give you my best every single day. And as long as we have that trust amongst each other, you're going to relax and you're going to be yourself. And then that's when I get the best version of you every day. And it's a lot easier said than done, but I think that trust, I talk about that word a lot with our players. Like, look, man, we can go through a lot here. You cannot like me for a minute or two, or you don't like me for a week, or you're mad at me. Reverse, I'm mad at you. You're not doing things. But as long as we trust each other, then we can get through anything, and everything will end up where it's supposed to be if we have that trust amongst each other. And when you trust somebody, you're exactly right. You relax, you're yourself. I know I can kind of let my hair down here and not worry about the guy next to me or what's going on, because my coaches have my best interest in mind. And I think that's really, it's easier said than done, but it's one thing I've had to work at now as a head coach, because you don't have those relations. You're not as close with the players when you're a head coach. I was an assistant for 17 years. So, I had those relationships and those conversations that you just don't get to have when you're the head coach. And so sometimes I have to use my assistants and my younger guys on staff to say, hey, tell me what's going on with so-and-so, or, hey, where are we as a team? Because I think they have a better finger and pulse on it sometimes.
That's super good. That's super good. That's something. Love to dive more into that, especially, yeah, like you're right. Like as the head coach, you don't get to have that as much, or guys will act differently. They don't maybe act as authentic, as real.
Exactly.
Being the head guy. And then, so you were saying, like, I guess in like a staff meeting, or just, hey, I'm worried about this guy. And then part of your staff meetings would be like, where are we at with this guy?
Yeah. Like I'll just, hey, Trey doesn't seem like himself, man. Or you know what? He's acting like he's pissed that I don't have him. I moved him to the 7 hole, or he's not playing as much. Like, do I need to sit him down here, or is he okay? Just those kind of conversations. I think that your younger guys, we've got a director of player development that played center field for us. We have an assistant strength coach that just finished last year. He was an everyday player. We have a director of pitching development that was our Friday night starter in 21. So I've got those young, good dudes that have the program, what's best for the program in mind, and they've walked in these kids' shoes, and so I can really use those kids. And those kids, it's not like they're going to go try to get information from them and bring it back to me, but I think they have a really good feel for, okay, I played with this guy last year. I know when he's acting like a what, and I can go, talk to him. Or, sometimes it's deeper, man. Like sometimes, I had one just this past semester where I noticed something was off quite a bit, and it ended up being, the girlfriend and the family, and calling off the engagement and stuff like that they're not going to tell me about that,
Right.
and you sometimes you just got to go grab them and say, hey, man, let's talk. And it's I think it's the most important thing about what we do, because it can't all be about baseball like we talked about earlier.
No, and I think it just sounds like you're getting to that point where, and I go back to that trust thing too, because it's such a hard thing, but you're really trying to gather their trust to be able to them be vulnerable and, again, let their hair down essentially and play at their best. So essentially, like, how have you, like you said, you really worked at it through this time, and after the 17 years of being an assistant coach, like what? Because you seem like, again, going back to your habits and routines, like doing about establishing trust.
Yeah, I really think, walking in the door and trying to connect with kids, and trying to, I think to establish it, you have to talk about what your plans and your goals are for these kids, and say, hey, man, I want you to be, I want you to just be a better student. Or, hey, man, how are we going to tackle you being better in the bullpen? Or, hey, how are we going to tackle you just being on time and being, and I think just really like the caring, trying to nurture habits and like what you want change. There's such a better way to communicate with kids and to try to build trust than maybe what I went through as a player. And it was that when I was, my experience was, you're going to do what I say I want you to do, and I really don't have to have an explanation for it because I'm the head coach. And so I guess I'm just kind of the opposite. Like 17 years of being an assistant coach, like, if you have a bad day in a scrimmage and all of a sudden the head coach just kind of puts his arm around you after practice and just says, "Hey, man, it's all good," like you're going to be better next time. Hey, man, now we got something to focus on. Now we got a lot to focus on, don't we? Till you can get out there, and it's just kind of that. Okay, he sees me.
Yeah.
Okay, I can take a deep breath now, and I can feel like, okay, you know what? It's going to be okay. I think that's what my job is to make our team and our players collectively and individually, when things go wrong, make them feel like, hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be okay if you just trust what we're telling you and you trust the environment that you're in. We'll get where we want to go, but you got to trust us first. And then I think the same thing goes with the players. Like, hey, man, when you're not over here at the field, or I'm asking you to do something academically, or hey, you've got to get your assignments in, or whatever the case is, I got to trust you to keep your house in order off the field, because I know you're going to keep your house in order down here because everybody loves baseball. Not all of us loved class. I was one.
Right. Yeah. The baseball is the easy part.
Yeah.
It's just like
there's
like being the head coach. Like baseball is the easy part. It's like all the other responsibilities that you have no idea about. And there's no book about.
No, you're right. You're right. There's no book for what to say and what to do, and every season's different, man. You never know.
Well, I think just like what you were just saying, like the prior guy that was having an issue with the girlfriend, with the family. There ain't no book on that.
Nope.
There ain't no book on that when you have that conversation. Like it's just so it's such a tough thing that people don't realize. As a head coach, I guess I should say a head coach who wants to make an impact, a head coach who wants to do it right. There's no nothing on that. So like it's just I would say, like, how have you handled like those kind of situations where there's no, like, in this previous one, when there's really no playbook?
I've had to. I think one thing I've learned as a head coach in 6 years, going on 7 now, is to just stop and listen. Let kids talk. Ask some questions. Try to get to know the details of a situation. I've had several different things. One thing I learned from Mike Fox at UNC: never say I've seen it all. Don't ever say that, because you haven't seen it all. And and I tell our players this, man. Like, look, I'm always going to keep my office door open. Like, it's always open. And there's nothing that you're going to walk in that office and tell me that more than likely, probably a 95, 99% chance, I haven't either seen some version of or watched a young man have to go through during his time in college. And so, like, that's what I think kids think is, I'm going to go off to college and I'm going to be a starter and I'm going to do well academically and I'm going to get drafted and I'm going to get my degree. And it's just going to be this wonderful. I mean, man, the amount of kids that just everything goes exactly like they thought it was going to go, the amount that hardly happens to anybody. And so I think really just being able to say, hey, man, look, like, this is just a bump in the road, or hey, it's gonna, like I talked about earlier, hey, man, it's gonna be okay. Like, we're gonna get through this together. And I tell my kids that too. Like, if you mess up and something bad's happened, like, there's only one person on this campus that is going to advocate for you louder than anybody, and it's going to be me. So first thing, tell me the truth. Let's get in here. Let's talk about it. Whatever the scenario is, and or if something's just bothering you and it's not allowing you to be yourself. Like, hey, let's talk about it. I may not have the answers, but I can tell you, since I've been here, every kid generally walks out feeling a lot better than they did when they walked in there. And all we did was just have a conversation. And sometimes you got to get on them, man. Like, hey, you don't see how stupid this is, or you can't see how frustrating you're making this for all of us because you're being a little bit selfish here. And I've had some of them walk out of there that are upset, but then they come back, a day or two later, and it's, hey, man, thanks for telling me what I didn't want to hear, but it was the truth. And you just walk through this thing together, man. There's, like you said, there's no book for it. Once you become the head coach, there's no book. You just got to kind of take it one day at a time.
For sure. I mean, it also sounds like, you probably rely on, Coach Fox and a couple of the guys that you probably have trusted as well, and are in your corner, I'm sure.
Yeah, I asked myself that a lot, especially my first year. Like, whoa, okay, what would Coach Fox do here, or how would he have handled this? Same thing with Mark Scaff at UNC Wilmington. That two guys that were just huge in my career, mentors to me. That I was down in Wilmington for 5 years and UNC for 8, so that's 13 of my 25 years. Half my time's been spent with those guys, and they're great husbands, they're great dads, first. And then I think just the influence that they have on the kids, it's obviously made a difference, and they've won. So
right.
those two things go right hand in hand. It's like we were talking about earlier. Like I just think sometimes people look so much at the record and the winning and the consistency, but I think really when you have that on the outside, the things that are going on the inside, your family life is in good shape, and you're able to be who you need to be for the players. And I think there's just so many things that go on underneath that a consistent winning program has somebody, and there's priorities that are in the right areas. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's inspiring for people like it's man, even that alone, like that philosophy for me and just how I am like now, like it just puts me at ease. It just puts me at ease to understand. And then thinking of an 18-year-old who's got all these other things going on, and how that can be put at ease. Like, hey, we're going to make sure that you're right in these areas first, and then baseball is going to be easy. I don't know. I guess it's just for me, but I love that, just where I would honestly think it puts your players at ease.
Yeah, I really think, and that's what I try to focus on in the recruiting process. And I tell kids too, like when they come visit, like please bring your mother. Like, no offense to your dad, but like when your mom comes with you to visit, she knows, and we're biased, but I think Liberty's an unbelievable place that if I'm a mother, I'm comfortable leaving my child with people that care about his growth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to have the right people around him. He's going to live in an unbelievable dorm situation, the best I've ever seen for freshmen. And he's going to have amenities, and he's going to be in an environment where he's cared for in ways that just aren't all about baseball. And so that's really the biggest thing. I think that, when we talk about it in the recruiting process, it's like, what do you want out of all this? If it's all about you being drafted and you being a starter, or, if that's just if it's just the baseball piece, don't come here, because it's going to be, you're not going to fit in that locker room. If it's all about, what, I want to grow. I want to leave here and be somebody that's prepared to be something way more important than just a baseball player. And we start in those 5 areas, and we focus on those 5 areas. And man, it ain't just me. Like, it's our teammates too. And those guys in that locker room, that's what we've been able to do. And I probably should have started with that from a player perspective. I guess I'm talking more as a coach perspective, but there's been some guys in that locker room that have done an unbelievable job of just, hey man, we're going to meet you right where you're at. If you're different than we are, that's awesome. We love it that way. We're going to put our arm around you. This is how we've done it here. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but this is how we've done it here, and this is what's worked for us. And it's okay to just be yourself and come in here and be goofy or whatever it is you need to do to make sure you feel comfortable here. I mean, we've got with COVID now, some 5th and 6th year players, and that's been part of it that I've enjoyed, is they've kept that compass in the locker room pointed where it needs to be.
Yeah. Man, it's awesome. Just really, really, really good. Gosh, I love it, man. If it's just a baseball piece, don't come. That's something that's sitting with me as well, and little things like that. Like, is this something, like you said, your time at Wilmington and your time at Chapel Hill? Is this something that you had learned through them, Or what was the change? Is it something that's always been part of kind of where you've been around and you've ran with it, or was there a change somewhere?
Well,
I'm just
I
thinking,
think
like, for me, I'm thinking this could be a very scary thing for someone to kind of switch and think like that, and what that's all. Just thinking about the advice, or just kind of how this kind of came about, where you've kind of molded this philosophy and kind of got to this place.
no, that's an unbelievable question. I've never really thought about it. I would say that, okay, let's start here. I always had really good relationships with players.
Okay.
I was the recruiting coordinator at UNC. So I always enjoyed, I'm a people person. So
Mhm.
like, even if you came and visited North Carolina, I just enjoyed meeting somebody. Like Alex Bregman visited UNC from New Mexico. I'd never recruited somebody from New Mexico. I didn't even know who the kid was at the time. It was just kind of a quick visit, but I thought the kid was a pretty neat kid. And now look at him, stuff like that. So I always felt like I was good at connecting with kids and families.
Okay.
So when I came here, I thought, and I think over the course of your career, you think to yourself, you know what, if I was ever a head coach, I think I'd do it that way. You know what, if I was a head coach, I think I'd want to try this at practice, stuff like that, that I think I stored some things away. But, until you just get in there and you start talking about your program and you start talking about what your goals and what your vision is, until you start talking about it in front of a family, it's either going to come across really genuine and it's going to come across as something that I think people can feel and see and want to be a part of, or it's just going to come across as like a used car salesman, very artificial, very, that doesn't do much for me. And I've, I think I've been able to take the passion that I have for the growth of players and the relationship with the players, and I think it's been able to come out in an hour and a half, 2 hour visit with a family, in a way where I think kids are just able to say, you know what, I can feel like somebody cares about me, somebody is has my best interest in mind. Oh, and oh, by the way, they win. They've
Mm.
won every year, and they've gone to three straight. Don't get me wrong, that's a big piece of recruiting too, right? Like, you don't want
Oh
to go
yeah.
somewhere where they don't win because it's not going to be as fun. So, I just think it's evolved, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with the answer to your, just an unbelievable question. I never really thought about that, but I think it's just evolved over my time as a head coach. I've got a passion for other people and a passion for recruiting. Like, when you come on your recruiting visit, it's my favorite. I love that. I love just being around a kid and his family and spending time with them and getting to know them and just sharing myself and our program with them. And so, with that has carried on to, okay, the things you talk about in recruiting, I try to evaluate myself on the field. Like, are we delivering on the things that we talked about with these kids in the recruiting process, right? Like, are we doing that? Are we living that out on a regular basis with them? And it holds you accountable if you care. It holds you accountable if you want to, make a difference in these kids' lives. So I don't know. That's all we. And then I've got unbelievable assistant coaches that do the same thing. Like, let's not make this about me. I mean, they've been incredible with identifying players, getting them here, and then being authentic on the visit and during their time here to make it something that I think kids have really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a very unique place, But like one thing
Correct.
I love what you just said there was like, as a coach, you truly care. Like, you can say all you want, but like you said, you're gonna feel that, and I just think, like, when you put in there, it was like, you're gonna see those things if you care. Are we checking these boxes that we said? Because at the end of the day, it sounds like, we're about what we say. We're not about, like, we're gonna say what we're gonna do, what we say.
Yep.
Or like
Yep.
some of the other thing is just lip service.
Right. Well, and I think too, like, I mean, I think you have to believe that, like, God has a plan for your life that's way better than what you have in mind. And, like, do you want to come to Liberty? Because you come to Liberty, you're going to be able to trust that plan around other people that are like minded in their vision and in their walk with Christ. And you're going to be you're going to be supported in that way too. And so I think when you just said that, it just came to mind for me is, yeah, we're unique. Like you can talk about your faith and you can talk about some things at Liberty that you can't openly talk about elsewhere. And so, I'm I'm going to be right there with our guy. I've got things, just some morals and values in our program that are rooted in my faith that I'm just not going to waver from. And I think our guys feel some of those pillars in our program, and they feel that support from me that's unconditional. And so I think it's, like I said, I think everybody's experience here has been really good, and it's been, unique. It's not perfect. It's not going to be, everybody's Disneyland, but our kids have had a great, I think, experience with going through what I think is just probably the most pivotal time in your life. It was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these kids they need us. They need us desperately, with all the things that go with being that age and the routine and the habits and the discipline. I'll go back to that again. They need us at that point in their lives, and it's up to us. And I feel an immense responsibility to continue to do with a young man what his parents have done with him, for 18 years. And now it's our turn to continue to foster some of those same habits and allow him to be a little bit more independent in doing it. But there's going to be people that have the same end point in mind for them, and that's to leave college and be ready to be a man and a husband and a father and all those things that matter way more than baseball.
Way more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's man. Love it. I guess man, that was great. That was so good. This it just got me thinking about a ton of stuff, that I was just like, man, I love the reflection of it all and thinking through the things. So couldn't be more excited about all those stuff. Like, oh man, thinking about again, like just how unique, Liberty is, in terms of, the faith part, and it's such a big part of what people know about, I guess maybe they don't know about Liberty, how strong the faith is there. And does, I guess like anything, does it scare kids away? Is it something that you felt like, or is it something that you've probably had to do enough homework that kids aren't going to be overwhelmed by that when they get on campus?
Yeah. I mean, it would probably be exactly what you would think. There's kids that like, whoa, that's not for me. Totally understand. That's fine. There's kids that are, hey man, I've heard some things, like, tell me what
Mm-hmm.
the deal is there. Other kids are like, yeah, I'm completely open to that. And then there's other kids that is the main attraction for them with Liberty, is the fact that they can come to the number one Christian school in the country and celebrate, their faith and do it with like-minded people. So, there's everything in between those as well. I mean, our locker room looks exactly like that. It's got kids that I think were exposed to the gospel their whole lives, raised in a Christian home. And, this was part of the journey that they saw at an early age. And then there's some that have never been exposed to it, but they're open to the environment. And so, those are the things that I think really make it fun. Is we've had some kids in our program that they had never been exposed to it, and then they see, man, you guys are a little bit different. You treat people, a little bit different. What's the deal? There's something different about the people here at Liberty. I mean, I know that's really what brought me back, is that a lot of the same people that were here when I was an assistant were still here.
Nice.
And, Mickey, my assistant AD, that's our sports supervisor, Christy, one of our academic advisors. There's just something about it that's different, and it's just, you can feel it when you get here. I know, Hugh Freeze was our football coach for the last 4 years before he just left to go to Auburn, and him and I talked about that a lot. Just how you can feel it here, and how much of a difference that makes. Richie McKay is our basketball coach. He was here as the head coach. He left to go to Virginia to be an assistant, and then he came back. And a lot of the reasons that he came back are similar to the reasons I came back. And so you see kind of some similarities there in some of the coaches that are having success and the things that you want. And so, life's about people and it's about relationships. And when you have those in a really good place, it's hard to leave. It's hard to let go of that. I mean, I know that's something that, I've always thought about is, man, I love being back here. It's going to be hard for me to let go of it if it was ever an option for me to leave, and I'm not looking for one.
Right. And that's what, like, diving into more of like the success and what you're doing.
You there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm getting my little refill here. I can hear you though.
Oh yeah. Back. But like, and that's one of the thoughts that I even had, again, beyond the habits and like the excellence that you're living is man, like, would you want to leave? Like, because it sounds like, I mean, you're just on that trajectory where it's like, wow, like if an opportunity will come up, and it's just like, it's life, and you're gonna, right. We all have to do what we feel is best for our families and for ourselves. But yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity, but I'm just like, yeah, that was certainly a realistic thing of like, wow, would this guy, would you, how long is going to be there?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
And we get it a lot. It's one of the the first questions, a lot of kids will ask is, how much longer are you guys going to be here? I think I know some people are using that against us, from a recruiting standpoint. Those
Sure.
guys aren't going to be there much longer. I'll tell you this much. I've got my in-laws about 50 minutes from here. I'm a big hunter. I've got 110 acres of land that my father-in-law grew up on. That's 18 minutes from my office to hunt. And then another 86 acres over there where he lives. I've got two boys that are 13 and 16 that are at Liberty Christian Academy, and they love it there. And my wife's a kindergarten teacher here in town. It'd be hard to get it much better than what we've got here. So, never say never. I will say that, at this point, I can count on one hand the Liberty for. I can tell you that much. And those jobs are really, really hard to get, and they don't come open very often. So,
sure.
And I like to tell families that and leave it at that. It's part of our business, but there's a reason I came back here. It has a lot more to do with just being I want to be a head coach. I would, if that was the case, I would have left UNC. I had plenty of those opportunities while I was there, but I came back here for a reason. I think it's a very unique profile. I think we have a niche from a recruiting standpoint and a player development standpoint where we've got plenty of resources. We have a faith-based mission with the school that allows us to I think pour into kids' lives in a way that you can't some other places, and so it gives you a lot of reward. I'll leave it at that. Despite take the winning and the losing and that part of it out, there's a lot of reward in just our everyday, day-to-day business at Liberty and what we're able to do with our kids and with our jobs. It's a great environment.
Yeah, and I think when you, like you said, you get the right people in there, even for you, like as an the administration, everybody has that perspective in mind. You know what I mean? And like that's gotta be a, like, remember Butch Chafin would always say, like, there's some really good coaches just not in a good situation. Like it just sounds like even for that to understand that and have that philosophy where it also allows you to be around people that have that perspective. Where, sometimes you'll come in and guys won't have that perspective. Administration doesn't have that perspective, and you're trying to, that's your philosophy, or that's what you're trying to, that's where you're trying to be genuine. What a great situation.
It is. And it starts with Ian. I mean,
he's
our athletic director, and that's where it all starts and it ends. And I mean, he's so I guess the word takes so much pride in his leadership, and he's so professional, and it just trickles down to the other people in the department. And then, people ask all the time. I think the thing that frustrates me the most is that from the outside looking in, people think we're good at Liberty because we have a bunch of nice things. Like it's all of your athletic programs are winning there Well, of course, you guys got all these resources and you guys got all these facilities. And it's like, man, really? Like, does money and stadiums make everybody win? Like,
Right.
if that's the case, then why doesn't every SEC team win? Like you start, and there's so much more underneath all of that I wish people would be able to experience on a daily basis from Ian, and just I think the feel of our athletic department. It's just got a really unique space to what we do on our campus. I mean, we're just a small part of Liberty, but at the end of the day, we're kind of the front porch, being the athletic department. And I just think our athletic department represents our mission and our school so well. And it starts with Ian, and he's done an incredible job with making sure that is a priority for Liberty athletics in every sport.
Sure. So, and diving into a little more of those details of the culture of your team.
Yep.
When you talk about the mission and things like that, do you strictly just kind of keep with what the school does and with the administration, or do you guys take it a farther step within your team? Or just wondering how people, like, how you do that. Some people don't do it differently, but like, with as strong as your school is, do you feel like you have to keep it there, or do you dive into it even farther?
Yeah, no, I try to really simplify it for our guys. When I first got there, I was thinking, man, we need to have all these, different pillars in our program, and this is how it was going to look. And, and I think all that stuff is great, but I think the more simple you make it and the more direct it becomes, it's easier to point back to it. And it's easier for it to be like, hey guys, this is what we're talking about when we talk about serving. That's our first pillar, is to serve each other. Whether it's coach to player, player to player, player to coach. There's a lot of ways to get outside yourself and just come down to the ballpark and serve your teammates. And if you just start every day that way, like, I'm walking in here to serve my teammates. Like, what can I do to make the guy next to me better? It's amazing when you get outside yourself how much your performance, you relax and you play better, because you're not just focused and so worried on getting your hits or making your plays, or whatever you're doing on the mound. Just the serve. We talk about that a lot, like being down there to serve. The second part is to grow, and like this is a growth opportunity for us guys. We just got our butts kicked. Like, we can go one of two different ways. We can grow from this, or we can not, and it can become something that becomes a hurdle for us. So having the growth part be there, that's not going to happen unless you're willing to serve, right? So there's just, those two pillars kind of are at the center of what we do. And our last pillar is to compete. So serve, grow, and compete are those three pillars in our program, where, the last one's kind of, I guess, inherent with being who we are and being a good program is like, I want you guys to be nice kids, off the field and in the community. But when the game starts, I don't want nice players. I want competitive, what's going out there and getting after it. So, those are the things that we talk about. And usually when things don't go well, it's in one of those areas where maybe we weren't as competitive as we needed to be on the mound, or, hey, you know what, when things don't go well, we're just going to try to grow together through all of this. And if things aren't going well over an extended period of time, I don't think you're down here to serve in the right capacity. And I think sometimes maybe that looks like a little bit selfish. And if you have too many of those, you and I both know where that's going to get you, and it's not going to get you anywhere. So, I kind of waited a few years to really focus on 3 or 4 pillars that I thought were really good. Listened to Tony Bennett at Virginia when he won the national championship there in 2000, I think it was 15 maybe. And if you listen to him talk about, that season and what their pillars in their program were like, he's a Christian, he's a neat guy. So that was one thing I remembered listening to and taking a lot from. But then at the end of the day, you have to make it yours, and you have to make it unique to, I think, what your program and your philosophy is all about. And so, those are the only 3 words on the wall in our stadium: serve, grow, and compete. And there's no Omaha and however many miles to Omaha. I think that's great and all, but for us, we want to focus on those 3 things on a daily basis. And then, Omaha would be a byproduct of those three things being focused on, tremendously.
100%. Being more detailed there. And I picked up on the one thing you said. We waited a couple years to focus on these pillars, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what was the process like there? And is that something that just kind of evolved like that, or was
Yeah.
that something from the start? Like, we're just going to kind of wait to kind of do that, or just kind of how your process and where you are now?
Yeah, I think it was more my process. The thing that I didn't want to do is come in and be the new head coach and just start flashing all these slogans and all this, stuff that really, to me as a player, that doesn't have any substance to it until I figure out how much you want to care about me as a player. Like if I don't, and it goes back to you said it, is the trust factor. If I can't really trust this guy, all these words on the wall in the stadium and all this stuff you stand up in front of the team and talk about, blah, that's got no weight to it. It's got no value to it unless we have, that relationship. So really, I started with just the kids, like having relationships with the kids and having fun with them on the field and smiling with them and putting my arm around them. That's how I started. And so we didn't have these pillars to our program and we didn't have stuff on the walls of the stadium. We didn't have any of that stuff because I wanted it to be authentic and I wanted it to be genuine. And I want the kids to, because I think if those relationships are good and like the kids are like, man, I really trust this guy, then the next thing I talk about or the next thing that I think is a big step for our program, you're going to hopefully sit up on the edge of your seat and your hopefully eyes are going to get a little bit bigger because, okay, I see what he's doing for us on a regular basis. The assistants have bought in, like, okay, what's next? And that's kind of how I think I wanted it to be. I didn't want to throw too much at them too early. I just wanted to be there for them and be part of their journey and be on the field with them and make them feel like I was fighting for them. And then the trust, would continue to grow. And then the things that came out of my mouth would certainly have, the value that they need to have to bleed into the culture of our program. And I think it worked, pretty well.
Yeah, it's definitely has spoken for itself. And like I said, how about like, and I think that could even be like talk about part of coaches' bios. Like you just mentioned about 3 guys you have on staff now that had just graduated that are now on your staff. You know what I mean? Like I think that even like a lot of times when we talk about as coaches, like how good. I'll let you know in 4 years this kid graduates, or I'll let you know like here what they're doing. Like they think that is like that's a testament to like, well, no, people are staying around like that. We're doing this is what this is about. Like that's where people are seeing certain value that I'm gonna do this for a living. I'm going to get in here and kind of do this for my job and still be around. Like I guess because that kind of leads me like it's something I had thought about like previously as we had talked about the uniqueness of Liberty and like the things that you're doing and like how has that because you've of course you've been through with Wilmington, the place you've been with staffing and going through staffs and getting people to work with. Being at Liberty in your unique situation and how you guys are, has that presented challenges for you to build your staff and getting the right guys for that?
No, it's actually been the opposite. I think you'd be surprised at how many baseball coaches in our sport in the college level, how many guys where faith is a big part of their life and a big part of their family. And so, that's never been any type of issue for me. Now, I will say the staff members that I've hired, and I've tried to be really intentional with having my eyes on, what, if this position ever came open, Trey Cobb's the guy that I'd like to go after, right out of the gate. So I've been able to kind of target guys that I think would be a great fit for our players, for me, for our school and our program. And I've been able to kind of zero in on them and get them, when it comes time. We do have 4 former players on staff it makes me smile. I left Andrew out. He's our volunteer. He's from up your way. He's from West Virginia.
Yep.
Yeah. Koala's on staff. And so he was a senior our first year there as a coaching staff. And so they had taken his scholarship and, it was his last year. And So we decided to renew his scholarship. Didn't know anything about him except his first impression was incredible. And, now he's back on staff with us. And then actually, it's funny. I left another one out. We've got 5. So Koalo is our volunteer assistant. Derek Orndorff played center field for us last year. He's there as a graduate assistant for our strength and conditioning. John O'Connor played center field for us in 19. He is the director of player development. Trevor DeLate was our Friday night starter in 2021, went 12-1, and he's back as our director of pitching development. And then Ryan Cordell is a student assistant finishing his degree. He played in the big leagues for the Mets in 2019 for the White Sox in 2019. He was up pretty much the whole year. And then he was with the Mets during COVID in 20. And his experience is awesome because he played in the big leagues with those guys, and he gets, his voice is a little bit louder than the rest of us when it comes to those players listening to what it was like to play in the big league. So, so 5 former players intentionally here because they've been in the shoes of our players, and 4 of the 5 played for us as a coaching staff. So, Cordell was the only one that didn't, but he's been very quick to jump. This is his second year with us as he finishes his degree, and he's a Liberty guy, big time, through and through. It's just been fun, man. I'm going to look back on this stretch because we won't keep them all forever. They're young and they're good, and they're going to all move on. But I'll look back on this 2 or 3 year stretch in our program with having 5 former players and think to myself, man, that was as good as it gets. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. I just put it something to remind myself to do, like when I talk about the bio, because I just think that speaks volumes. I think it speaks absolute volumes to what you're doing in the culture and the guys really, like you said, the ultimate baseball experience that they're having it. They're having it, yep. and they want to have more of it.
Yeah.
So this is awesome.
Yeah. No, it's been great, man. It's like I said, it's a cool thing, man. Like you see these guys, like Derek just got married. Trevor just had his first child. He was married his last year playing here. So it's like, not only are you trying to win games with them, you're doing life with these kids that were in that locker room, and now they're married, and it's pretty cool, man. It's why you coach, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always said like this, the college years and things like that, it's important, but the thing is, like, it'll set you up for the next 10 years. Like, it's either good or bad. Like, it's going to steer you in first 10 years or not. And after 10 years, you get about 30, 32. Like, then hopefully you get yourself together and you have to go somewhere else. But like, if you can set yourself on a trajectory for the next 10 years, good or bad, for sure.
No, you're right. And those guys are, number one, they're like self starters, self-motivated. You don't have to tell them what to do. I mean, like I said, they're all going to be good at something down the road here. I hope it's in our building, but I'm not naive to think that, eventually here somebody's going to come calling and try to hire them away. So we're going to soak in our time with all of them being together, in the same building for sure.
Yeah, enjoy it. And that's awesome. Coach, I guess, man, like, so when you came in 16 and thinking about what your staff was and then how it's grown, more staffing. Like you said, you've had the support from admin, and we've got these. How do you manage? How have you managed like just the amount of people that you have to manage as a staff?
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, everybody, sometimes will have something that they need. I mean, in our building alone, we've got those 5 former players, myself, our director of operations, Coach Cannon, Coach Williams, and our strength coach and our trainer. So that's 11 people in our building just for baseball.
Yeah.
It's the only place I've ever been, North Carolina included, where we've got a strength coach that's dedicated to baseball, whose office is in our stadium. We have a trainer who's just for baseball, whose office is in our stadium. So the thing that I like to focus on is that the experience for our players is incredible because they get out of class and they come down to the stadium and there's 11 people sitting around waiting for you to get out of class because we want to get out of our office and get in the cages or, get on the field with you. So that's the biggest, best part for me. It's a little bit more. I try to check in with those guys. We try to meet as a staff. Certainly a lot of group messaging as far as, kind of what's going on, with scheduling or players, stuff like that. I mean, I have to check in with those guys from a scheduling standpoint because I do the practice plan. I do the daily, email with all the details. So I'll have to check in with those guys, to make sure that things, line up with what they want to do and how much time they need with the players and all that good stuff. But you're right. It's nice to have, all 10 of those guys and me make 11 in the building. But with that comes, a lot more. The communication's got to be very high. And now I will say, Dan, our trainer, and all the rest, my director of operations, Matt Williams, Tyler Cannon, those guys have been with us for a long time now. So they kind of know what to expect and they kind of know what my preferences and when we're going to practice, how we're going to practice, all that good stuff. So they don't have as many questions, but certainly the younger guys, you kind of have to make sure that, they understand where we're going and what we're doing and to communicate with them at a high level is certainly paramount when you're trying to run an organization.
Yeah. And when you, I guess wanting to create these new positions and as your staff grew, like, did you have a vision for like what this guy, like, hey, we need this, like, cause like, here's where I feel like what I want this guy's to do his job to be.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. So, hey, we want to have a director of player development here. And then my AD is like, okay, we'll draw up a job description. What does that look like? And so you start kind of digging through that and you can start kind of thinking about, okay, who would come to mind? And John O'Connor was actually here finishing his degree, getting his master's. And so he was around the program and he kind of gravitated towards that area, I guess you will, or kind of gravitated towards that space in our program because he saw a need for that. And it made it easy to transition. Hey, this is going to be the guy that goes right into that spot. And he's unbelievable. He's certified with On Base U, which is a derivative of TPI for screening of our players, their movements, their mobility, their stability, stuff like that. That translates to the field. Unbelievable spreadsheet data tracker, as you would imagine. And then Derek Orndorff was actually a pretty neat story for portal. Division II player at Seton Hill, and ended up contacting him and having some recruiting dialogue. Like, hey, we need another outfielder, but I don't have any scholarship money for you. And okay, well, that's definitely going to be a factor. What do you want to do? Well, I want to be a graduate assistant for strength and conditioning. Well, hey, guess what? We've got some graduate assistant money. How about you come and play for us for a year? You won't be on scholarship money, but then when you're done playing and you start your master's degree, I can pay for that. So it was almost like deferred compensation.
Yeah, it was
for Derek. Yeah, which was neat. So, everybody's kind of got their own story there and their own unique path. And, it's just grown. I mean, I think you have to have vision for player development, right?
Yeah.
Like the next thing for us is to improve our facility. And so when you go to your administration and you talk about the student athlete experience and you talk about what's best for them and how we're going to get where we need to go, I mean, let's just be honest. The next thing for us is to get to a super regional. Mm-hmm. Like that's the next box on Liberty's, resume as far as, can we get there? Absolutely. We can get there, but how are we going to get there? It's good players, it's player development. And with the changes that go with that trickles down into recruiting. So it's such a process, but at the end of the day, it starts with me having a passion for people in our program, player development, and then certainly the environment that they're put in. It's all going to start and finish with how I carry myself, how I communicate, all those things that sometimes you having a bad day, you're like, man, this is I got to be short with what I say, or you want to just make sure you're always being positive, but we're all human at some point, and some of those days are more challenging than others.
Yep. Yeah, totally get that. You can't have the good without the bad.
That's right.
It's good and bad. I like to say that's part of the game. Part of the game wasn't always good. What was good and bad.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's good. So I just like that. So I didn't, Coach, I'm gonna respect your time. I know you're a busy guy. especially being home with the family and all. So I want to just wrapping up in conclusion, just kind of like, it's for players and coaches alike, just kind of like what might be on your heart, what might be something that we maybe haven't touched base about that you'd just like to share. That really like just kind of where you at.
Yeah, that's good. I tell you what, I always like to talk about anytime I have the opportunity, kind of my path. It's easy for me to kind of relate to it. And I'm sure there's probably some younger coaches and players too, is, like started off making $3,000 a year. This was the year 2000. My salary was $3,000 a year. I had a locker room that I lived in. I had a cafeteria where I had free meals. This was at Wofford College, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Incredible program. Todd's done an unbelievable job there. But I took that job for $3,000 a year in 2000. My next job, I made $5,500. That was at Barton College in Wilson, North Carolina, Division II program. Then I went back to my alma mater at Campbell. And then really, I don't think my career kind of really took off until I got to UNC Wilmington in 2003 or 2004. So I think the biggest thing that I like to just encourage people is if you have a passion for people, I think we all have a passion for baseball, right? That's just kind of who we are as people. We all love the game. But I think you really truly have to have a passion for people if you want to coach. And the same thing with players. You have to have a passion for your teammates. And so just keeping your head down and not always wondering like what's next or, hey, I'm looking for the next opportunity. Just to be so good with the relationships you have where you are and just keep your head down and enjoy what you're doing on a daily basis. Whether, you know what, man, I'm not making a ton of money. You know what, man, I'm not playing as much as I want to. Like we're innately wired to focus on those things that aren't meeting our needs immediately because that's how
Mm-hmm.
our generation is. But I think really just to keep your head down and enjoy where you are. It's cliche, but it's true. Like be where your feet are, and just to be present in those moments that you have with players. And you're going to look up one day and you're going to find yourself in a pretty good situation. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. Is I had really good relationships. I really enjoyed where I was. Fox is offering me the job to be the recruiting coordinator and work with the hitters at the University of North Carolina. If you would have backed up to Barton and Wofford and Campbell, and you'd have told me that was going to happen, you're crazy, man. Like you're crazy. There's no way that I'm going to be an assistant coach in the ACC and at UNC one day. I hope that would happen, but it's just one of those things that sometimes I look back and I'm incredibly fortunate to have people in my life and relationships that help create opportunities for me that changed my career. And so they're out there if your eyes are open. I think the better way to say it, they're out there if your heart's open and your head's in the right place and you're showing up to work for the right opportunities and the right choices each day. And so I always say that to encourage young coaches and young players that the best is yet to come, man. Just keep on plugging.
Coach Scott Jackson, an incredible conversation. Just really enjoyed the conversation. Get a chance to get a little behind the scenes, get a little more details into how he's running his program, the philosophy behind him. Love this talk about how he helps his kids frame habits and routines, and how he's also able to basically break that ultimate student-athlete experience down to those simple routines, and how those are the three things, the big pillars: serve, compete, and grow. And how we do those things daily and do them really well, that everything will take care of itself. Just love those great points. It just sounded very interesting too. Like I liked how he's like, we're just gonna start off with a relationship. Like we're just gonna be really good at knowing all these players. That's what we do first, and it's molded into those three pillars. It's molded into like, here's what we're really about. Now that we've understood and everybody understands who we are, what we're doing, and being authentic and being real. which also then helps build that trust. The trust performance was such a great part of it. We're hearing that from a lot of really good coaches, just how they're building trust and how they're getting their players to buy in and believe what they're trying to tell them, good or bad too. These are also parts where players who aren't playing as much as they should, or not getting what they might vision that they are going to be, where he can still have these conversations where they know he has their back by being authentic. They understand that, and the more that we build that, the more that we can allow those hard conversations to happen, and where they can trust, like, okay, I'm not maybe the guy here, and this is the best role for me, or I'm going to keep working for it. Just a great thought, great ways. Some guys just have a great way of just putting things. And I know, like, just during this time, just how much more at ease I was, just being able to talk, and how he was able to create that, and through our conversation was just a really awesome conversation, and really thankful to have. Just enjoyed the last piece of advice, and just touching base about be good with the relationships you are in right now. I think we all hear that, like, be where your feet are. Like, even to break that down, like, be good at the relationships where you are. Be present, fully present in the relationships we have right now in our life, and then as we continue to move forward from there. So just another incredible piece of advice. I've really enjoyed the conversation. All those notes, I have those notes in Podbean if everyone wants to check those out. Again, big shout out to Netting Pros, Coach Jackson. I cannot thank you enough. Liberty University continues to get better and better, and it was just a full example of why we could see it there. So again, Coach Jackson, thank you enough, and you all, thank you so much for listening. Thank you all for the support, and until next time, keep getting better.